Welcome to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, the podcast where insights and innovation meet. Every episode, we dive into conversations with industry leaders, experts, and change makers, bringing you the stories and ideas in the renewable energy sector that shape our world. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Wes Ashworth. Welcome back to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy. Today, I'm joined by Owen Barrett, a clean tech entrepreneur who spent more than a decade challenging the status quo of how we deploy renewable energy. Owen started out as a global energy manager for a Fortune 500 company and then launched multiple ventures, including Z&E Capital, focused on decarbonizing commercial real estate. He's now the founder and president of Shine, a company reinventing how solar can work for the multifamily housing market. In this episode, we'll dig into why Owen believes our biggest problem isn't inventing new clean tech, but deploying what we already have. We'll talk about how Shine is making solar financially compelling for apartment owners, the impact of contractors on the industry's reputation, and how Owen stays optimistic even when policy winds shift. If you're passionate about scaling clean energy out in the real world, you won't want to miss this one. With that, Owen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to always start at the beginning and kind of hear your story and how you got into it. So what first pulled you into the world of clean tech, renewable energy?
I think honestly it was my childhood. I was spending a lot of time in the outdoors. It was camping, got into rock climbing, trail running, and it was just that sort of innate desire to try and figure out a way to align my professional life so that it had an impact on my personal life.
Yeah, I love that. And what was like the first stint into the industry, or how'd that come to be?
So I started getting interested in it, in like 2008. When there was not really a sustainability industry. I mean, sustainability at the time was like LEED. And I had a finance degree out of college. And so I was trying to figure out ways to break into LEED. But at the time, it was really an industry for like engineers and architects. I mean, it still is, but there's more variability in sort of what your background could be. And so I was trying to figure out how to break into kind of the LEED industry or just be a part of LEED. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I decided I'll go to grad school and get a degree in environmental science and management, and then hoped that combination of finance background with environmental science and management could kind of launch me into something. I didn't know what that would be, but I figured, it's 2 years for the industry to grow, get a little bit more mature. It's another piece of paper that says I know what I'm talking about. I hope that 2 degrees was better than 1, and it worked. It launched me into a career as a corporate energy manager for a Fortune 500 company. So fortunately, it all worked out just like I hoped it would.
That's awesome, man. You put out a plan. Obviously, intention is a big piece of that as well. And I think aligning passion. Anytime you align passion, I think good things can happen. So
I agree.
As you just mentioned, I mentioned in the intro as well, you spent those 3 years as a global energy manager at a Fortune 500 company. What did that role teach you about the clean energy opportunity? And what are some of those takeaway lessons maybe that you still use today?
It taught me that generally the boardroom does not care about the environment, but they care about dollars. And that was a super important lesson to learn early on, because I think if our industry can do a better job repositioning these projects as really revenue drivers and sort of forget about carbon, forget about trees, forget about polar bears, we'll have more success implementing projects.
Yeah. And it's cool to see that trend happening. I think more and more, even over the past several years, you're hearing so much more of that, and like making a business case for it, making sure the economics make sense, talking a lot about that a lot more. So I agree. I mean, but it's cool you were able to see that sort of firsthand, getting that experience. You made the leap into entrepreneurship in 2015. What pushed you to do that? Like, what happened to where you thought like, all right, maybe I need to go do this and jump out there? Was there a moment that shifted your mindset, or how that all come to pass?
Yeah, no, it was one pretty specific moment. So I had always, before the term side hustle was a term, like I always had side hustles, right? I was always doing something. I always just had this desire to try and figure out a business. And so at the time I was working on a company that I coined Waktito, because I was living in Southern California. I was going to Mexico on a lot of surf trips. And so my Spanish was improving, and Waktito means little watt. And I was like, oh, that's a great name for an energy company. And so the idea was just at the time, this is when LED lights were sort of taking over. And so tons of parking garages in Southern California. I noticed that the majority of parking garages were lit with linear fluorescence, no lighting controls. Lights were on 24/7. And so sort of taking what I learned from the energy manager role, I was like, man, all of these parking garages are great candidates for lighting upgrades to LED. So I tried to start up a company that just did that, just focus on parking garages. And I was part of a program in San Diego that kind of helped you think through business models, connected you with angel investors. And I was pitching an angel investor, and he said, what are you doing to earn money? Like, how are you surviving as you try and build this company? Yeah. And I said, well, I've got a regular, 9-to-5 corporate job. And he looked at me deadpan and said, I don't invest in part-time entrepreneurs. And I was like, man, that's hurt. But it was so honest and so important for me to hear, because at the time I was asking people for money when I didn't believe in myself or my business enough to take the leap.
Yeah.
And so within a couple of weeks, I quit my job and I was full-time Watito, and it failed. It blew up. It never took off. I reached out to that guy, Bill was his name, and told him, hey, I'm committed, like, time to write the check. And he's like, nah, it's not really for me. But it taught me, like, if you're not ready to take the leap and you're not ready to really believe in yourself, like, it's going to be really hard to get investors on board.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love that kind of like all in, like, if you don't believe in it fully, how can an investor? But that's a great story. But you didn't quit, obviously. Like, first one failed, and then talk to me a little bit about that after. Like, that's not easy to go through, but you stuck with it, obviously, and kept going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally a pretty stubborn person, which isn't always good, but I think it's pretty good in business. I think that's a good trait to have. And I knew that there was sort of this revolution happening within the lighting industry. So I kept trying to, so then I started a company called Lumio that was more, I was like, all right, let's take a step back. Let's not just focus on parking garages. There's a lot of other types of companies that can benefit from LED upgrades.
Yeah.
And again, that failed. Like, that just did not go well. It was probably 18 months before I had any kind of traction.
Yeah.
And I found traction in a grant program in California called Prop 39.
Okay.
Where they were giving public school districts grant money to invest in renewable energy efficiency. I noticed sort of a market gap between the big districts and the little districts. So we just went out to serve all the little districts, and we ended up doing 8 figures in revenue in like the next 18 months. Wow. Just because there was this huge need.
Yeah.
And so it quickly went from lighting, we did lighting, and then one of the schools that we did a lighting project for asked if we could do HVAC, and being like a hungry entrepreneur, I said yes. So then we had to figure out how to do HVAC. And then they asked if we could do solar. So then we said yes, figured out how to do solar. So it quickly morphed into this niche ESCO for rural school districts. I mean, and it was wild to see that growth. I'd never experienced anything like it. I was not expecting it. It would just caught me by surprise.
Yeah. And as most entrepreneurs, like, it's usually not your first time, right?
Yeah.
It's usually like second, third, like, you got to keep going. But that's awesome. That's a cool story. So from like Lumio to Z&E Capital to Shine, you've built multiple ventures obviously now. What's the through line that connects them all?
I think it's just figuring out how to deploy on-site renewable energy faster. That's like the theme, right? I thought with Z&E Capital, so I ended up selling Lumio, had a little bit of personal capital, and started using that to invest in multifamily real estate. Noticed that the multifamily industry is probably the furthest behind when it comes to just energy management. So started Z&E Capital to try and shift that industry. At first, it started as a consulting company to try and get other owners to adopt solar into their acquisitions. Noticed that it's really hard to change real estate sort of from the outside. And so we started buying apartments ourselves, putting on-site solar on. The hypothesis there was if we did it and we did it well, we could show that solar is accretive to project level returns, and we could get the industry to start adopting it faster. Well, the problem was there was not the right technology, existing technology, to really deploy solar on multifamily, because in most of the US, if you want to install solar on multifamily properties beyond the common area meter, you have to install one small solar system per apartment unit.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need a software system that allows you to bill tenants and do measurement verification, post-installation, and that didn't exist. So we just sort of kept pulling on the thread. Where does this lead? How are we going to do this better? How are we going to do it faster? And it led to us developing Shine, it started as a software platform. And then we started to see like what we actually developed. And we're like, this is way bigger than us buying apartment buildings. Let's go pivot back to what we know how to do, which is deploy on-site solar. And let's just do it for the multifamily industry. That's it. So we get asked to do, industrial sites. We get asked to do shopping centers. We get asked to do residential. We turn it all down because all we do is install solar on multifamily properties.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. It's a cool story, and we'll get more into like what Shine does and what you're doing in the marketplace. So it's clear your path has been driven by a vision for real impact, not just innovation for innovation's sake. And that brings us to the heart of what you've been working on these past few years and just thinking about that, not just building new technology, but figuring out how to actually get it into the world at scale. But I do want to talk about the obstacles and breakthroughs you've encountered while trying to push clean tech concept to widespread adoption. And so you've said that the biggest issue in clean tech isn't invention, it's deployment. And I love that sentiment. What are the real obstacles keeping us from moving faster?
Generally, it stays within. So when I was in corporate America, it was the sustainability department. And now that I'm in multifamily, it's the ESG department. And the sustainability department and the ESG department are too siloed.
Yeah.
And so these projects stay in these little tiny departments that are way smaller than like a similar department, like a different department of similar importance within an organization. So I just don't think there's enough people working on these projects or focusing on them. But I also think it's kind of our own fault because we, the ESG teams, or we, the sustainability teams, often stay in our own silo. We don't, within multifamily, we don't talk to the asset managers enough. We don't talk to the property managers enough. Same thing with corporate sustainability. So I feel like we just need to get these conversations. We need to like level them up beyond our department and get engagement from other departments. I mean, there's a lot of other problems, but that's a big one.
Yeah, no question. And something you mentioned too. So Shine started as an internal fix for your real estate portfolio. Tell us a bit more about that. And then what was the specific frustration that led you to just build something new entirely?
So when Z&E Capital started, we were buying master metered apartment buildings. Yeah. So they're apartment buildings built like hotels. You may have 250 apartment units, but one electric meter. And we were doing that purposefully because it was the only way that we could figure out how to install on-site solar beyond the common area meter.
Yeah.
So when you have apartment buildings, you have generally tenants with their own electric meters, and they're responsible for 95-ish% of the total electric consumption on a multifamily property. Then you have the common area meters, which may cover the leasing office, the fitness center, the pool, the exterior lights. That's only 5% of total electric consumption. When you have a master metered property, that's both. So it's the entire load of the property in a single meter. And so we said, all right, let's go buy those and deploy on-site solar because that's easy. Those properties are old and they're hard to find.
Right.
So we're building a business model on hard to find, hard to manage assets, which is not a good business model to build. That is a challenging business model.
I'm sure.
So we want to figure out, all right, how do we take the same approach of what we call the solar value add and how do we deploy it on individually metered properties? And the challenge that we ran into was there's 3 states where what I'm about to say doesn't hold true. And those 3 states are California, Colorado, and Massachusetts, because they have something called virtual net energy metering, which we can get into. But in the 47 other states, if you want to install solar beyond the common area meters, you have to install one small solar system per apartment unit.
Yeah.
That's slightly more complicated of an installation approach, but that wasn't what was holding us up. What was holding us up was post-installation, how do we bill those 200 tenants that each have their own solar system?
Sure.
How do we monitor those 200 solar systems to make sure that they're all actually working? And there was not a tool out there that existed. And so the first thing that we did was we asked some of these solar billing companies, can you build us this tool so that we can go acquire individually metered properties? And they said no, which at the time was incredibly frustrating, but it actually turned into like the biggest miss, like advantageous miss for us because it forced us to develop this tool ourselves. And then once we developed this tool, we basically realized like we just unlocked solar for the entire multifamily industry.
Yeah.
And so now we intimately understand multifamily because we've bought it. We intimately understand solar because that's what we've been doing for 12 years. And we've purpose built a software platform for solar on the multifamily industry. And so we're better positioned than anybody to just crack that nut of how do we get solar on apartments across the US.
Yeah, that's incredible. Awesome stuff. And you've mentioned several, but I'm curious, just any others. Why is solar adoption in multifamily housing so low? Anything else that you haven't hit on yet? And then What are some maybe those hidden frictions that most people don't see or don't think about?
So the big problem in multifamily that's different than like owner occupied real estate is it's called the split incentive problem.
Yeah.
So me, the solar company, asks the owner of the multifamily property, pay $1 million for the solar system so that your tenants can save money. And the owners are like, I'm not doing that. Like, why am I going to spend money if it's going to save the tenants money?
Right.
And that same problem, that split incentive problem, that's the reason that energy efficiency is hard in multifamily, because the same problem exists. Like, you save tenants money, which is great for tenants, but the landlord has to foot the bills. That's just not realistic. And so what we're trying to solve kind of at the core with our software is how can we shift the value from the tenant to the owner to incentivize them to pay for that CapEx in the first place. And that's really the key to unlocking solar for multifamilies, helping owners and landlords make money off their investment.
Yeah. And speaking of that, so you have described Shine's impact in terms of financial returns, not sustainability. You touched on that briefly in the beginning as well. I'm curious to learn more about that. Just how do you do that? And how do you turn solar into a value engine for multifamily investors? What does that look like in real life?
I mean, so if you think about your average tenant, they're spending maybe $100 a month in electricity, and they're always going to spend that. There's no way to avoid an electricity bill in an apartment building. The question that we ask apartment owners is, do you want that tenant paying $100 to the utility, or do you want that tenant paying $100 to you? It's either you or the utility. And oftentimes what we see is that it's almost always the financials of on-site solar for multifamily are compelling enough to the point where owners want to invest the CapEx. There are a few states where that's not true. Like Kansas is one in particular that it's really hard to get the numbers to work.
Okay.
But in almost every other state, you're talking like high teens IRR over a 10-year hold, which is generally higher than they're getting from the real estate investment itself, which means your solar project is accretive to the project level returns, which means LPs, the limited partners, make more money, which means general partners make more money, which means you can go buy more real estate.
Yeah, no brainer. Thinking about it just a little bit in your experience. So what do multifamily owners usually believe about solar when you first talk to them and you're first having some of those initial meetings? How does that belief shift once they see your approach?
So the solar industry at large has tried to convince multifamily owners to install solar in the common area meters only, because that's the easy way to do it.
Sure.
The problem with that is that the numbers are not compelling enough for anybody to spend time on it. And that's just the unfortunate reality. So if you may have a 200 unit property that costs, I don't know, $40 million to buy. Part of that's going to be debt. Part of that's going to be equity. The common area spend for that property, maybe, $100,000 a year in common area electricity. So solar companies are pitching apartment owners, let's spend, I don't know, $400,000 to save $50,000, or maybe we can just use these numbers, $50,000 of your common area electric bill.
Yeah.
And $50,000 in NOI, in net operating income, just is not big enough on a $40 million property to get anybody's attention.
Yeah.
And so they're like, this is nice, but I'm going to focus on projects that move the needle more. So with our approach, it's instead of spending $400,000, let's spend $3 million. And instead of $50,000 in NOI, let's generate $200,000 in NOI. And now you're talking about numbers that are generally big enough that it at least gets somebody's attention. They don't always do it, but it's getting the attention that's the hardest part. And then from there we can go through, okay, here's how we would actually do it. Let's dial in these numbers a little bit more. Maybe it's not that project, but now they're thinking about it on future acquisitions. And that's really what we're trying to entrench in the industry is if you're not thinking about this on your future acquisitions, you're just leaving money on the table. And that's generally not how real estate works, right? They're very profit oriented.
100%. Yeah, no, that's super cool. And just kind of hearing how Shine was born out of both a little bit of frustration and there wasn't a solution. So you had to really create one. And then just that opportunity that was there, it's fascinating, especially how you found ways to make solar financially compelling, as you just mentioned there, for multifamily owners. But as with any industry, even the best ideas run into bigger systemic challenges. And I want to shift gears and dig into some of the harder truths about the clean tech world and why the road to scaling sustainable solutions is not always smooth. But one of the things you always hear, and it comes up a lot, especially when you're talking about residential, multifamily, solar, is just bad contractors doing real damage to the industry. There's a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of good ones as well, too. But talk to me a bit about that. Why is it such a critical issue, and what do we need to know?
So I agree. There's a lot of bad contractors out there, but I also feel that some of the blame has to go on, in this example, the homeowners that are chasing low bid.
Sure.
Right? Low bid forces contractors to use the shittiest components that they can find because they're looking for that cheapest dollar per watt install. So I think our industry has to do a better job of walking away from low bid scenarios, even though that's hard to do. Yeah. You know, it's hard to walk away from work, but we've decided not to do that. Like, we're not going to chase low bid because that's going to force us to install components that we know are not going to last a long time. We know that they're going to fail. And the warranty is not going to, the manufacturer is not going to stand behind the warranty. And then we're going to look like a bad contractor because we can't go replace that or repair it. So it's tricky because I feel like customers need to understand that you can't just chase low bid. And I feel like contractors need to do a better job if they are going to go after it, explaining like, look, we're trying to install this for as cheap as possible based on your suggestion. That is going to introduce risks of components failing earlier than they should.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that comes down to the education to the homeowner or the folks that are in that buying decision? Like, do they not know? And is it a matter of explaining it correctly, and why you maybe should take a higher quality option or those sort of things?
It's hard because there's generally no like apples to apples consistency in proposals.
Yeah,
right.
Fair.
You have contractors using different modules, different inverters. Our average customer, your average homeowner, doesn't understand the difference between string inverters and microinverters and what that means if one of them fails. They don't understand the difference between tier 1 modules and tier 3 modules. So honestly, I don't know how you solve the problem, other than what I do think is interesting is there's a huge opportunity, and any contractor in any of the trades will agree with what I'm about to say. And that's, if you create the reputation that you're a good contractor, you do what you say, you do it on time, and you do it on budget, you don't need to market because word of mouth works for you.
Without a doubt.
And so I think that's the opportunity that we have in our industry, is for sort of the cream to rise, and for those contractors to win based on word of mouth, where other contractors are going to have to spend a ton on marketing because they don't get that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most like word of mouth driven industries there is. And I think about like me personally, it's that way. Like I have 3-4 contractors that I use for different things, and I will only use them. And anybody in my life that needs that particular thing, I send them to that person, because I go, they're honest. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to sell you something you don't need. They're going to be straight with you. They do good work, and you're putting your name on the line, but you're happy to do that. But you're right. The double-edged sword is then they become so busy that when I need help, I got to wait a little longer, but they're quality. So you're okay with that. So I think it's, it's all those things, but thinking about the industry as a whole, how do you think the industry should address the quality gap without slowing down deployment?
Well, I think they're going to be forced to next year with the big bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how this would have happened without the recent legislation, but I think the bad contractors are going to get forced out of business.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a big shift in the industry. I think residential will get hit first, just with the way that the tax credits are changing there. And then I think commercial is going to follow shortly behind in the second half of 26 and 2027.
Yeah. And maybe that'll go into solving this next question. There's a major shortage of skilled trades. Granted, a bunch of bad contractors go away, then there might be more people available. But what's your take on how to attract new talent? And why is the industry up to this point sort of fallen short there?
That's a great question too. I don't know. I do think it's changing to a certain extent. I have heard that like Gen Z and generations after that, skilled trades is becoming more in vogue than it was for my generation. When I was finishing high school, nobody mentioned anything about the skilled trades. It was not an option. It was just go to college or get a job. But it was never get a job in the skilled trades, which is interesting. I think, at that company Lumia that I had, we tried to engage So we were doing a lot of work with schools. We're doing clean tech projects with schools. And in California, clean tech was the fastest growing job market in the state. And we brought this to schools and we said, look, this is a great opportunity for project-based learning. Like, let's identify the kids that are not college bound. Let's get them out there with the contractors when we're building the solar systems on site or doing the HVAC optimizations. And let's teach them about career pathways post high school. And it just fell on deaf ears. We could not figure out how to get it off the ground. And I was shocked because I was like, man, this is like the greatest idea ever. Like, let's use these projects at these schools to get kids excited. So I think part of it is just education. We need to sort of remember that college is not the only path for students post high school. I think the industry too has to do a better job of, like, you know, I hate to say it, but getting on social media, like just hammering social media with, hey, you want to make $100,000 2 years after high school? Like, come be a electrician, come be a plumber. So I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but I do think there's opportunities to create these pathways with projects that are happening on school or school grounds. I feel like that's an obvious opportunity that somebody should go launch a business around.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you've seen more of that, even manufacturing trends, things like that, getting into schools early. And maybe that's part of the rise of the new generations being more open to it. But in recruiting, it's crazy. You do see it. You see people that you know, went to school and schooling's great and did all this sort of stuff and, you know, where they're making. And then you have somebody just a really, really skilled trades and they're making the same amount of money.
Like, with no debt.
With zero debt. And they like it because you're hardwired that way too. That's the thing, is you're going to be miserable just stuck in a corporate office environment and sitting at your desk all day. So you find more fulfillment and all that too.
I agree. Huge opportunity. I mean, yeah, it's just a massive opportunity.
Yeah. So thinking too, just about current things that are happening with just rise of AI seems like it's all we hear about every day. Rise of AI, decline of some white collar entry level jobs, I think because of that as well too. Tell me your take on that, and what role do you see for the trades in that future?
Well, I think there's going to be I think there's going to be an even bigger demand for skilled trades to build out all of this infrastructure that we need for AI. So I think it's really interesting because I think you already have a shortage. I think the tech companies are going to be able to pay a premium if they need to bring skilled trades to build out their data centers.
Sure.
I think those data centers are in turn going to increase electricity rates for everybody. And then you're going to have the economics of solar be better than they ever have been, even without the tax credit.
Yeah.
So I think we're about to start this cycle of shortage of skilled trades getting worse, electricity prices getting higher, demand for solar increasing. And I mean, not just solar, like any energy efficiency or renewable energy technology. So I don't know. I don't think AI is going to take electricians' jobs anytime soon. I think that's going to be around for a while. But I do think we're about to enter a very interesting cycle where there's not enough labor to do the jobs that need to be done to help increase energy demand via AI.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I agree completely with all of that. What's another, just thinking about the clean energy industry, what's one hard truth that they need to face head on right now, just in your world that you're thinking about?
Colleges should get rid of all sustainability majors. I think that is the biggest waste of time. My take on this is, it's funny because I have a graduate degree in basically sustainability. It's not called that, but it's the same thing. I think there's an opportunity for graduate degrees, but I think what colleges really should do is turn all of those majors into minors.
Okay.
So kids that are focused on sustainability, get the sustainability minor, but get the finance major or the marketing major or the, computer science major, and then couple it with sustainability, because sustainability degrees on their own are not worth much. I would never hire someone with a sustainability major. They don't do anything. They don't know how to do anything.
Yeah. If anything, it shows that person's really passionate about it. The industry, but to that point, how much value do you get outside of that? I don't know. You would know better than I.
Zero.
He says zero. We'll take it. Yeah, I like that thought though. Making it more of a minor still shows that. You see that even with certifications and things like that. And we have hiring managers say that, like, I don't require the certification, but it's nice to see that they have that, because that shows they are really passionate about this area and they took it upon themselves to seek out more education in that.
And I think the job opportunity within sustainability is going to, it's going to exist for a long time. I think it's going to get even more important.
Yeah.
But I think you need to develop real skills, not just, how to prepare an ESG report or how to complain about carbon emissions. Like
Yeah.
You need to have the skills to solve something. And I hope that becomes more of a pattern that we start to see.
Yeah. And to your point, even like the financial side, how important that is. You see the skill
Massive.
set, it's so valuable. And those people are making like really good money within the sector as well too.
Yeah.
Great career.
Yeah.
But no, I love hearing just your candid thoughts. But I do love that you stay optimistic. You know, you've shared a lot of things there of like, yeah, things are challenging. There's some bad things, but man, hopes on the horizon. Feel good about where things are headed. Just even in the face of those real challenges. So I'd like to just kind of look ahead, talk about what keeps you inspired, where you see Shine heading, and the legacy you hope to leave behind as well too when all is said and done. Despite all the challenges, and we know there are new challenges as well, but you said adoption is still at an all-time high. What data points or trends give you the most optimism? Like, give us an optimistic speech.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last data point I saw for residential solar penetration in the US, it was like 3.4%, I think. I mean, that's zero.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're basically talking about zero. So the opportunity to increase that number, it's only upside.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's going to be a little bit of turbulence the next couple of years as we see sort of how this whole big bill shakes out with tax credits going away. But as we've discussed, like energy prices are going nowhere but up.
Yeah.
So take away the tax credit, increase electricity prices a couple of years in a row, and you're right back to where you started.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a huge opportunity for that 3.4% number to get to 10, to get to 20, to get to 30. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side is multifamily is even less than that. Yeah. Now, I have not seen a data point on what multifamily solar penetration is, but I bet it's less than 1. I bet it's even less than like 0.5%. So we're excited about the same thing, which is like, we're at the very beginning of this massive transition, and the certain administrations can try to stop it or slow it down, but like the numbers always win, and the numbers will always win. And so I just think we're at the very beginning of this huge shift, and there's going to be a ton of job opportunities in the future. There are right now. And so I think people that are interested in it should stay interested in it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Even, with all the headwinds, everything else, companies are still hiring. We're still doing that as well too. So I think still a lot of hope and optimism. I think most people you talk to in the industry, as much as there are, again, headwinds, like there's still that level of optimism, which is great. And I think that's needed.
I agree with the headwind, but I think our industry, generally Democrats, we're just not as good at framing things as Republicans. I think we need to call these not headwinds, but like annoyances. Like it's just annoying that all these companies now have to like rejigger their numbers and figure out, like it's just annoying. And this happens all the time in the industry. It's like, let's just stop annoying the renewable energy industry and just let this thing hum.
Right. Yeah. And I think back to your point of making that like financial case, making the business case, talking in ways like that, where really no matter where you sit, on the scale, it's something that you can agree with and go, oh, I mean, it makes financial sense. Like, okay, it's a good option. All right. You're not pulling on, my heartstrings about, I feel this about the environment or feel this way or that way, but you are making a true business case, which again, I think that's an important piece of it. How about you personally? How do you personally stay hopeful? Thinking about policy shifts, big, beautiful bill, all this other stuff, tariffs and everything else. And, it's long been called the solar coaster. That wasn't been this year. That's been around for a long time. But how do you stay hopeful when things shift or when headlines look grim?
I mean, like I've been an athlete my whole life. I played soccer in college, and I think having that chip on your shoulder goes a long way. And like, to me, this most recent legislation just should put a chip on everybody's shoulder to just prove them wrong. Like, okay, take away the tax credits with solar. Continue to incentivize fossil fuels, and just watch what happens over the next 10 years. Solar's going to crush fossil fuels. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what you do with the tax credit. It's still going to crush. And there's going to be a little bit of turbulence, but like over the long run, you're going to see adoption of renewables just crush fossil fuels. So I think you got to have the long-term vision though, right? You can't like live in the next 6 months or next year or next 2 years. And it's hard, but you have to have that long-term vision. And I think if you do, you can survive these like ups and downs in the near term.
In any model, the hockey stick curve and all this sort of stuff, it's never this like straight perfect line, right? Like there are dips along the way, it's up and down, but is it trending in the right direction? And I would say this absolutely is, regardless of
you can't stop technology.
No.
You can't, you will not stop solar. You will not stop EVs. There's nothing that anybody can do that's going to take over.
I agree. I'm thinking about another business leader. If they're sitting in their seat in renewable energy and clean tech, maybe not as optimistic as you, they're kind of down on the headlines and feeling bad. What's some encouragement you would offer?
Turn off the news.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that.
Just stop like the doom scrolling. Yeah. I think just like go talk to some people and I don't know, talk to your customers, like talk to customers of the most recent projects that you've implemented and what that's done to their budget. But yeah, I don't think like regardless if you're a CNN or you're a Fox watcher, I don't think headlines help anybody.
I agree. That's sound advice, and I've shared that exact same thing, and I think that's important. And I've said this on multiple times on the show. It's like you see all these headlines, and then I've talked to real leaders in companies, and you hear a different story.
Yeah.
And to your point, I love that. Like, go talk to some other people in the industry.
Yeah.
Share what you're going through. Share what you're thinking. See what they think, and I think you'll get a different perspective. So I love that. Yeah. Tell us a bit more about Shine. So what's your long-term vision, 5-year vision? What does it look like, and what are some other things that you wish people knew about Shine?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would wish for specifically multifamily owners to know is just that it's possible to install solar on tenant meters anywhere in the country. I mean, that's like our biggest educational push right now. You don't need virtual net energy metering, which is like a utility sponsored program. You don't even need net metering just by virtue of like usually how much roof space there is relative to apartments and how much the apartments use. And so I think if a lot of people have evaluated solar in the past could be the last year, the last 10 years. Like they'll just say, oh, we've looked at it in the past. It doesn't work. Like it's time to reevaluate and just getting this industry. I talk about this a lot on podcasts, but the real estate industry is so good at turning every square foot into an increased dollar in rent. Yeah. They do it with changing carpet to LVP. They do it with changing one-tone paint to two-tone, adding dog parks, adding covered parking. Like they are so good at optimizing for income, but they don't think about what they can do on the roof. It just stops. So just look at your roof as it's either income producing or it's not, and figure out how to make that roof produce income.
Yeah, that's awesome. Somebody listening to this that's interested in that, what's a good starting place? Like where should they go or what should they do?
Just reach out to us, info@getshine.com. Check out our website. I mean, we do analyses all day long for free because it always starts with the numbers. So everyone's like, oh, this sounds great, but what do the numbers actually look like? And the numbers are just heavily dependent on what the property itself looks like, what utility it's located in, what part of the country it's in. Like it's hard to just give a vague answer about what a project will look like. So, get a no-cost analysis done, dig into the numbers. Like I said before, it may not be this particular project, but at least we're kind of starting this educational momentum so that the industry is hopefully thinking about it for future acquisitions.
Yeah, good stuff. And I'll link some of that in the show notes as well, too. People can go check out. I'll ask this question. We talked a little bit about policy, and maybe this is obvious, but if you could influence one national policy today, what would it be and why?
Oh, man. I think if we're going to get rid of the incentives for renewables, let's get rid of it for fossil fuels, too. Let's just create a level playing field and let capitalism take over.
I love that one. Love that one. When you think about your legacy, so 20 years from now or when things are all said and done, what do you hope to have changed in the clean energy landscape? What do you hope to leave behind?
I want to be known as the guy that helped multifamily figure out solar.
Yes.
That's what I want my gravestone to say.
I love it. It's on recording. Any of your loved ones that listen to this,
yeah, exactly.
You got it. I love that. A few more questions as we wrap up, just to dig in a couple more things. So thinking about your entrepreneurial journey, we talked a little bit about that and some early failures. I think that's always a part of the story. What's one maybe early mistake you made in that journey that taught you something you still carry with you?
I didn't know anything about sales. So I came from this financial background of like, if the numbers make sense, the customer will do it. And that is not true. Right? So I think anybody that has an interest in entrepreneurship, you either need to figure out how to sell or you need to partner with someone that needs to figure out how to sell. But if one of the two co-founders is not like a salesperson, it's going to be hard for that company to succeed.
100%. A couple more things too. In that journey, so as you're coming up as an entrepreneur, growing, learning, failing than succeeding. Any piece of advice that you received during that time that really like stuck with you, or you hold as kind of a core?
No advice like personally, but I did listen to I love listening to podcasts. Like I don't read. I know it's like a faux pas to mention now in the business world, but I don't have time for it. But I listen to podcasts all the time. And I was listening to this one about the guy that started Boom, which is like a supersonic jet company, and he had no background in aviation, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said was just work on something that you'd be proud to fail at.
Yeah,
which is a funny way to look at it.
I like that though.
But I mean, the reality is most businesses fail. So mine might, everybody else's might, unfortunately. But you want to feel good about the time that you put in. So you want it to be something that tell your kids about, tell your friends about. Maybe it didn't work out, but at least I tried.
Yeah, I love that. Final question, I'll open up the floor. Anything you didn't get to share, parting words of wisdom, advice, anything else you want to share with the audience?
It's so important to just stay optimistic and not get trapped in the headlines. Like, it's just not helpful for our industry.
No, I agree. You got to have that thread of optimism. And again, I think if you really do take a moment and look at it and look at where it's headed, and you look at just the past years and where things have gone, it's inevitable. It's like it's going forward. This is going to happen, regardless of what's going on out there. So sometimes it's a matter of timing, and you take some bumps in the road or annoyances, as you said, but ultimately it's trending ahead there. So stay hopeful, stay positive.
Yeah.
Great words to end on. So with that, we'll conclude today's episode of Green Giants. A huge thank you to you, Owen, for sharing your insights. And I love your just candid, no nonsense approach to accelerating clean energy deployment, the fun conversation. So if you enjoyed the conversation, please be sure to follow the show, leave us a review. It really helps other listeners discover these stories. You can learn more about Shai and Owen's work. I'll link in the show notes as well. And then outside of that, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
This episode of Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, was brought to you by Lead Group Search. If you enjoyed today's discussion and are looking to recruit top talent for your company or find your next career opportunity in the renewable energy sector, visit leadgroupsearch.com. Let's continue driving the future of clean energy together. Until next time, keep pushing toward a greener future.